What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Readily Random Podcast. My name is Larry Roberts, and as usual, I am your host. Hey, I gotta tell you, I always say this, that I've got an exciting episode in store for you. This one's very informative and exciting all at the same time. So, my guest today, I've known her for, well, we'll just say a few years. And it's actually more than just a few, because I actually met her in high school. Can you believe that? And being the mouthy kind of guy that I was my senior year, I walked into the first class of the day, and I believe it was English, if my memory serves me right. It could be wrong, because, again, it's been a day or two. And I said, hey, where's that homeschool chick at? Because, I wasn't ever homeschooled, and I thought, oh, my gosh, she's coming in her senior year just to get credit. Well, she did, and it worked out real well for her. But she's not just the homeschool chick then. She is the homeschool chick now. So I have to ask you, Nicki Truesdell, are you ready to be larger than life?
I am.
Awesome. So it sounds like, as far as homeschooling goes, you are larger than life. I mean, you're out there, you're working, you're a huge advocate. You regularly write your congressmen in reference to the laws, and you want to make sure that they still appreciate homeschooling for the value that it is. We see stuff all the time in the news about schools are doing this now, and they're teaching that now, and they're leaving this and adding that. But you want to take control of the school for your children, and that's why you're such an advocate of homeschooling.
Yeah, that's right. I started back, as you know, as a teenager. My mom and dad took me out of school along with my sister when I was 11, actually before I was a teenager. And so I was homeschooled for all of those years up until my senior year. And then I met some friends, which are still our mutual friends, and they persuaded me to come and join them for senior year at a little school locally. And so I did, and that's how I met you. And that was a fun introduction to my first day at a school. Anyway, I did graduate, and all of my credits were real, as the president of the school found out and admitted on the last day that she was a little doubtful, but she found out they were real. And I loved my homeschooling experience so much growing up that I knew all along that's what I would do when I had kids. And so it really wasn't a decision I had to make. It was just automatic for me. And so in 1996, I had my first daughter, and as soon as I could possibly start teaching her something, I did. And it just has been a lifetime of learning at home for us. That daughter is now 20, and she graduated 2 years ago. Oh, no, it was 3 years ago. Time flies, doesn't it?
It sure does.
And I have 4 other children who I'm still teaching at home. Yeah, it makes me feel old. But as I've gone through these years as now a homeschool mom, it's been a while. It's been 17 years of it for me as an adult. I've seen a lot, and I've seen a lot of changes in the homeschool movement, everything from curriculum to extracurricular activities and the laws, and it's more popular than ever. And as I see people talk about it in forums online, there's so many questions that they have. How do I get started? Where do I go? Where do I buy books? And I don't think I could possibly do this. And so it really prompted me to start writing about it and sharing my experiences as a kid and also as a mom. And so I started blogging in 2009 about homeschooling and politics. And so that's kind of mixed on my website, but what it's mostly geared toward is homeschooling, how to do it, how we do it, some curriculum suggestions, and basically what I came down to this year was my new motto, and that's that anyone can homeschool. And the reason I say that is because it's not rocket science to teach your children the things that you already know, or at least you were taught and might remember in a fuzzy way and can access that knowledge again. And so what I do now is spend most of my time writing, blogging, and talking to people and encouraging them that if for any reason they have a need to remove their child from a school, or if they don't want to send them in the first place, that there really is an option that's not as hard as it sounds. And so that's what I talk about. And it started a few years ago with me just talking to people on the phone in my area, maybe someone would send me an email because they heard that I would talk to people about homeschooling, and I would just visit with them for a while and explain how it worked. Or if it was someone I knew, I'd just invite them over and let them look at our books and see how we do it and show them that you don't need a teaching certificate or a college degree or a classroom. You know, you don't need anything special to teach your kids. And that's kind of flowed into me giving talks in local areas and then going online, of course, and writing about it. And then the other thing that you mentioned was trying to protect our rights to homeschool in Texas and across the country. That's something that I've gotten into more lately because the threats have risen to change what we have. And in Texas, for those who don't know, we have almost absolute freedom to homeschool compared to other states in the country. So we don't have to report to any agency or the state. We don't have to use a certain curriculum. We don't have to take tests or submit tests to anyone. Those are optional. And so that's a pretty great freedom. And to me, that's the kind of freedom that we were kind of guaranteed in the Declaration of Independence to begin with. It's the rights to be humans and in this case, to be parents.
One of the things that kind of caught my attention there was your motto. And then you followed it up with saying that you don't necessarily have to have books or a curriculum. And that leads me to one of my concerns, especially in the school system these days, is that we spend so much time essentially programming kids with history from a perspective and all of this information that really they're not going to use. Whereas from a homeschooling perspective, you have an opportunity to instill in your children the skills and the knowledge to actually survive and flourish in life.
Absolutely. In fact, that's what I try to encourage all parents when they start this is to think outside of a classroom. Don't think like a school that you went to because that's only one way to do it. And if you've chosen to leave a school for whatever reason, then you certainly don't need to copy what they were doing there. And so what I encourage parents to do, first of all, is sit down and write down why they decided that they wanted to do this. And second, decide what you want out of your children by the time they graduate. What kind of people are you raising? That's usually what I go by. And so for my kids, I think I want people that are well-adjusted in society. They can read and write well. They can have conversations easily with people of any age. They can function when they go out in public, and they are socialized, by the way. They are able to do business transactions without my help, but they can also think for themselves. They can look at the news critically and not just believe everything they see or hear. They know their faith and they understand what we've taught them from a biblical worldview, and they understand how other people might see things, and so they're able to have conversations like that. And then I want them to know how to do basic things, how to keep a job, how to be a good employee, how to manage their money. There's so many things to being just a functional part of society, and that's what I'm going for. I'm not looking to create college graduates necessarily, unless that's what my kids want.
Now,
but I hope to produce people that can go out and do whatever they want. Well, I am training them to raise chickens and grow a garden. That's about the extent of our farm life.
And llamas.
And we don't have llamas.
Dang it.
We don't have any other animals besides dogs and cats.
All right, fair enough. So now you cut out for just a second there. I think you said that your children were also very well socialized, and your voice cut out just as you were saying that. I think that's what I heard you say, if you wanted to reiterate that. Because that seems to be a misconception in the homeschool. Like homeschool has a dark cloud over its head, and it's just raining because all the kids are perceived as, they don't know how to interact with people, and they'll never have jobs because they don't know how to talk to people, and they've never dealt with anybody except for their mother. And this, can you just spell all those myths?
Well, I can certainly do that. That has been probably the longest running objection to homeschooling. We started in my family in 1983, and that was an objection then, and it still is now. And I think it's just sort of something that's repeated and people don't really think it through. My kids and all the other homeschoolers I know are socialized, and I would say probably more than people would realize. They go out on a daily basis into public. They do know how to walk in a store and purchase things. They can talk to the people at the library. They get jobs. Both of my older daughters have jobs. My oldest is 20, and 1 year after she started working, she works at a local Starbucks. She was given the job of a shift manager, and she was 18 or 19 at that time. And my second daughter works at another place waiting tables, and so they're very good at what they do, and they do actually interact with people and talk to others. I can just tell you that homeschoolers probably spend more time getting out of the house than they do staying at home in this new modern age of homeschooling. That's what I call it. There are things called co-ops where you get together weekly with other families and do classes together. There are groups for science and math and arts and drama and sports and everything you can think of. And so I'm one of the rare ones who pretty much does stay home most of the week, and we do join some activities a couple times a week. But overall, if you're talking about actually just interacting with people, homeschoolers definitely have that down. But I will go further and say that socialization is something that I try to ask people to define when they bring that up, because it's kind of funny when you ask, what do you mean by that? Then it's hard to answer that question. And if socialization just means going to school every day, it's kind of an empty answer, because what we consider in the world of homeschooling socialization to be is being able to interact with anyone at any time and talk on any subject as intelligently as possible. And that doesn't mean you know everything, but it means you're willing to have a conversation and look people in the eye and be polite and shake hands and things like that. And so there may be some holdover from the 80s with that old question, but I can tell you it's not a problem anymore.
So let me ask you this, and it's great to hear that. You gave us your success quote a little while, or your motto a little while ago. Tell me about one of the failures that you've experienced through homeschooling. Do you have any moment where you look back and go, if I'd have just done this, or maybe this could have happened a little bit better? And what did you learn from that experience?
Yes, there's so many things I would have done differently. Not that I regret, but I've learned from the past. I've learned some new things and new ways. Probably one of the things that I've learned the most, and I'd say it the most, is, like I told you, you don't have to copy the schoolroom that you're used to. In America, it's our society. Everyone goes to school, and so we think of school as being in a classroom with a chalkboard and a teacher and a textbook, and you spend 1 hour on each subject until you've done 7 or 8 subjects all day long. And so I had to learn early on that that's not really how you have to do it to get a good education. And I tried it with my first daughter. Kindergarten, first day of homeschooling, I had the whole living room set up like a classroom. We had the bulletin board with the cute little pictures on it and the calendar and the globe and, all of that stuff. And I quickly learned that not everybody thrives that way, and that's probably why so many struggle in school, because public schools are set up one way, and it does appeal to a lot of kids, but it doesn't work for all of them. And I learned that my first daughter would have been one of those kids, and she hated pencils, she hated writing, and we cried. This was kindergarten. We were doing way too much book work and not just enjoying the learning process. And so after a year or so of that, I started reading and learning some more things and realizing that we did not have to recreate a public school classroom. What I needed to do was help her love learning. And by that, I was able to really change. And I'm so thankful I learned it that long ago, because with 4 other kids, it's made a huge difference. But I had to learn that sometimes if she didn't want to write all of her math problems, she could do them verbally, and she was still learning them without having to use the pencil that she hated so much. And we could read aloud together, even though she might not enjoy some of the stories. She would enjoy listening to them, and she was absorbing biographies and history and lots of fun things. And so we really learned to think outside the box, and that was probably the biggest change early on, and it made a big difference. And that's what I tell people probably more than anything. Just try to enjoy learning, and it's not hard. You can have a library card. If you've got access to the internet, some notebook paper and pencils and crayons, you've got all you you need to have a good education.
So do you find that the internet is more of a benefit to homeschooling? Or do you think that missing out on, you mentioned the library card, but there's still that old school feel of opening a textbook, and they all have that textbook smell, and that's some of the things that you remember. You know what I mean? You still, that's what you remember about learning. Do you still try to capture that sense of mysticism in the learning process, or is the cold screen of the internet sufficient?
No, I will say the cold screen of the internet is not sufficient, and so we use it for some things, but we sit down and look at real books for a lot of things. And so as far as getting that mysticism, my kids have never been to a school outside our home, so they don't have what you and I would think of as the school experience. So for them, that's very foreign. What they are used to is sitting in the living room. We sit around on the couches, and I read aloud for a couple hours a day, and then they have reading assignments. And there are some textbooks actually involved, depending on the subject we're using. Definitely math, has textbooks. And then depending on the grade level and the child and the subject, there will be other textbooks. But we try to not make that our sole source of learning. As far as the internet goes, we have courses online. I have a daughter taking French online. She has a driver's ed course that's online. And then my son is taking computer science and pre-algebra online. So definitely the internet is a godsend. I don't even remember how we did it without the internet, honestly. Because if my kids ask me a question, I just say, hold on, let's look it up. And it's right there. The world is at our fingertips. However, I love books, and so we still use real books. We rarely even read on a Kindle or a tablet or anything like that. We have one room in our house that's just a library, and so we quit going to the public library because of book fees and started buying our own books. And so now I have a library that I can access when they want to know something. Today was a perfect example. My youngest, who is 6, brought a butterfly in the house, and she said, Mama, I don't know what kind this is. And I said, hold on. We have field guides on our library bookshelf. So I got out the one about caterpillars and butterflies. We looked it up. I found another one that shows how butterflies eat. It was real simple, real basic, but we had the books available. I also had recently showed her a YouTube video of a caterpillar changing into a butterfly. And so for a 6-year-old, that's very basic introductory science, but it happens naturally. And that's kind of how I like things to happen. Not that I don't teach on a schedule. Also, we do have a scope and sequence, but I like to have those resources available for those moments when they just want to know something, and I say, hold on, we've got that information right here. So that's why I say anyone can homeschool, because when you start out with your kids, they're babies, and you teach them all the first things they need to know, how to eat and sit up and put on shoes and walk and talk and the most basic things in life, you already start teaching them. And then I think we've kind of gotten into a point where we think we can't do the rest, that it takes professionals to teach them how to read and how to do math and how to write and how to think. But it's not just for professionals, and it really is something that any parent can do. And so my website is devoted to trying to show that it's fun, it's easy, it's very basic. And if you don't know stuff, you can get the information. Just like I said, algebra online, of course, that's how I'm going to do it, because math is not my thing. So whether you know a bunch of stuff or you don't, it's not going to stop you. It's not going to change the way your homeschool looks, because the world really is at our fingertips now in this, it's an amazing time for homeschooling compared to 1983 when I first started.
So I got to know, you mentioned that you love books and you have a library. Do you have a set of encyclopedias?
Well, not necessarily, although because of the internet,
Well, I know, that's why I had to ask. With the books, maybe it was kind of a classic type thing, but a lot of people listening.
We have a lot of classics, but we went to a library book sale, and they had a really neat set of old children's encyclopedias. They're probably from the 80s, and my little 7-year-old son said, "Oh, I want these." He was just fascinated with them. He's a nonfiction reader, and I thought, well, I can't pass these up. They were 10 cents each. So yeah, we brought the whole set home, and he really enjoys looking at them.
There you
So
go.
that's the only set of encyclopedias we have.
That's all right, because when I was little, I had like one. It was like some sort of book of wonder or book of knowledge or something, and it covered just about. You probably had one too. I think they were pretty popular back when we were kids. And I would read that thing over and over and over again, and it was just fascinating.
Yeah, and see, that's what I like to expand on. When they bring up something, we just stop and talk about it, and we'll try to look up information and explore it. And that's also obviously outside our normal school time, but that's my goal, is to give them a love of learning so that school is not drudgery. For so many people, it's just something that they dread, and there's a few that love school and love learning, but it can happen for every single kid. And it's really fun to be the parent and the teacher, because I don't think there's anything as exciting as watching each of my children learn how to read. That first day that they pick up a little book that they love and they read it by themselves, it's like Christmas morning, really. And so that's one of the coolest things that I get to be there for. And then I'm also there when they learn long division, which is not like Christmas morning. It's something quite different. But I can be there as the mom and be patient and say, you know what, I know this stuff is really hard. Let's take a break. Let's do some more tomorrow. Instead of doing 30 problems because some teacher told them to, I can look at them and say, I think this is enough for today. Let's take a break. Why don't you go outside and jump on the trampoline instead? And let's get back to it tomorrow. And so I don't push them over the edge with the hate of something that's hard. We get to the point where they say, I don't know, and then we stop, and then we pick it up again the next day. And so there's all these different aspects to why I think it's so cool. It's not hard, but it's also really fun. It's something I love, and that's why I talk about it constantly.
That's awesome. What right now? Now let me ask you this before I even move on to the next topic. You mentioned that there's no certificates. Anybody can do it. Now, is the education, is it accredited? Can it be accredited, or do you still? Because my brother was homeschooled after, I believe, 5th or 6th grade, and he ended up just going and getting his high school equivalent, and then he went on to college, and he's got 2 bachelor's degrees. So, I mean, it's not like it held him back at all, right? But I'm wondering, how does that work, and can you shed some light on that subject?
Yeah. Well, you can do an accredited program if you prefer, and that's really something that parents just choose because they want it, because it makes them feel comfortable. And so those are programs that you can sign up for. There's tons of them because the curriculum market is just wide open. But it does not have to be accredited. And the way you graduate in Texas, there's several options. I kept a transcript from my oldest daughter, and when she graduated, we made it official. We had it notarized. And then we also have homeschool graduations, and those look different wherever you are. But in our area, our local homeschool group gets together every year, and all the seniors plan a graduation ceremony and have a party. And they get a real diploma, and it's accepted by colleges. Most of the kids I know are in college or have already graduated. And so it is legitimate, and colleges are welcoming homeschoolers overwhelmingly. They rarely have an issue. I think the only holdback right now is some aspects of joining the military, where you kind of have to jump through some hoops with paperwork. But as far as getting into college or trade schools or anything like that, it's actually been a really neat transformation over the past couple decades to see how willing people are to take in homeschoolers. In fact, they're looking for them.
Wow.
And so it's really, high school sounds hard to people. I tell you what, I've had the most fun homeschooling my high schoolers because it's such a different experience. I have my 16-year-old will graduate next year. She's about to be a senior. And really, all she's focusing on now is a couple of subjects and a lot of reading, because we've, kind of assessed what she needs to graduate and what she wants to do. And so it's really fun to really custom tailor each high school education to each child. And by the senior year, I find, in my family at least, and with some others, you're kind of slacking off a little bit, and it's not as hard as what I remember it being in our private school. It's less stress, and it's a lot more excitement, just kind of filling in those final gaps and learning a few things and getting ready for the real world. So graduation is not a problem.
So do you find, too, that you've established a tighter relationship with your children through homeschooling? I mean, I know for me, my mom and I, we still don't see eye to eye on many things, but I can guarantee you that, especially back then, if she tried homeschooling me, there would have been a little bit of a ruckus in the Roberts residence.
Yeah, it really does build a whole different relationship because you're with your kids all day. And I think for some people that sounds a little bit scary. But the thing is, when you're with them all day, you're able to so much more change the atmosphere in your home. You are not just the parent that they see every morning and every night, and then other people have an influence all day. The parents are the main influence. And to me, that's a really good thing. And my kids do have other outside influences. They have friends and they go to classes and things. But I feel like it's so important in the child and teenage years for the parents to be the number one influence in their children's lives. And so I have found it to be a really fun time. Teenagers are not nearly as scary as you hear, at least in this circumstance, because we get downtime together. We get to talk through things. And just like I said, when we teach different subjects, we can sit and talk as long as they want to try to understand something that we're learning. And they get my viewpoint, and then they may say, but I heard this too. What do you think? And so it's a really neat thing to talk through things where we might not have that time if they're always at school and then at activities after school and then doing mounds of homework. We have family time every single day, and it's really such a different atmosphere than I know what you get if your kids are in school all day.
Right. Wow. Hey, tell me one thing that really excites you about homeschooling today, and what's your vision for the future?
Well, one thing that excites me, I think, is I'm going to go back to the internet and just the amazing amount of resources available. Every day there's something new offered, and most people don't realize this, but there is a huge industry of curriculum and books and learning resources available that are targeted just to homeschoolers. And so a lot of people say, how do I get books, or where's the free online course? And I say, wait a second, you have no idea what's out there. There's so much available to us that you can truly customize your child's learning experience. I use stuff from different curriculum companies for every single subject in our home. And so to me, that's so exciting. As a parent, you can sit down with 20 catalogs in front of you and pick the very best math program and the very best science and the most fun literature or history. And then if you don't like it, you can say, you know what, that's not working. Sell it to someone who wants to try it. Let's try something else. And then the other thing is the amount of groups that are forming all over the place. It's a whole new world, really, that I'm still kind of getting used to, with classes and teams and clubs and sports and so many things. You can sign up for something every single day of the week and actually not be at home for your school. So for people that are afraid of maybe teaching a certain subject or afraid that their children won't have friends, neither one of those things are a problem, because there's so many opportunities. And I live in a rural area, and I'm telling you, it still happens out here. And what we've learned, too, is if there's not something available, you start something yourself.
Like llama races?
Now, what was the other question? Well, yeah, you could do that, I guess. We don't do llama races here.
I don't know what my fascination is with llamas. I don't know. No, the second part of that question was, what is your vision of the future for homeschooling?
Well, that's funny because it kind of goes against what I just said.
Uh-oh.
There are so many things available that I do see new parents signing up for every possible thing under the sun until they kind of lost that whole homeschool feel that you can have when you're sitting on the couch and you're reading a good book together and the kids say, read another chapter, Mom, that is so good. Or, you say, today we're gonna make something. Recently I sat down with my kids and we made an Iroquois Indian village. Instead of just looking at pictures on the internet, which we could do, or even watching videos and reading books, we made it too. So we just get out the craft supplies and we look at pictures and we figure out something, and we, just good old crafts. That's some hands-on learning. And so those things and the downtime, the time where the kids can sprawl on the floor and draw something or build Legos while they're listening to me read, that's the kind of thing that I'm afraid a lot of parents are missing because of all the great opportunities. And so it's kind of a mixed blessing. I try to encourage a lot of people to keep as much home time as they can in their homeschool because the pioneers of homeschooling, that was the whole goal, to kind of separate yourselves from the school-minded society and just build a family at home. So,
nice.
I kind of go both ways.
I gotcha. Well, hey, you've mentioned a few of the internet resources that are available for folks that may be interested in transitioning or even just starting out with homeschooling. Do you have some of those resources available that we could include in the podcast as well as the show notes for this episode?
Yes. I will be glad to send you all the information, but I'll tell you a couple of my favorite books one is called Educating the Wholehearted Child, and that's by Clay and Sally Clarkson. That's, after all these years, one of my favorite books still. I read it when my first daughter was little, and I still read it and recommend it today. It basically kind of talks about what I just said, and that's the really cozy atmosphere. And I heard you use the word cozy in your video earlier. That's kind of what it is. It's really a fun thing. And so that book just kind of tells you how to really enjoy and embrace the learning lifestyle while your children are young, because they won't be young forever. It goes so fast. But it also lays out some really neat ways to do it. Another book I recommend, which is almost completely opposite in philosophies, but it's still a really good book, is called The Well-Trained Mind, and that's by Susan Wise Bauer. And her book tells you how to provide a classical education at home, which is what a lot of people pay big money for in a private school. And the book can be overwhelming, but basically it's good to sit and read it and absorb it and get ideas and not try to copy every single thing. Those two books kind of go against each other in style, but they also really give you a great idea about what a homeschool can look like. And then practically, there's a book called Cathy Duffy Reviews. I think it's her 101 Top Homeschool Curriculum Reviews. I'll get you the exact link. Basically, she reviews curriculum constantly, and she lists the best ones, but she also talks about learning styles and budgets, and it really helps a new person walk through how in the world do I start picking out materials to teach with at home. Those are probably my top three.
Cool. One thing you mentioned, there was budgets, and that's not something, I don't want to get into specific numbers, obviously, but are there curriculum that are available for most walks of life?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. You don't have to
yes.
be, you don't have to be well off necessarily to do a homeschool.
No, I'm glad that you asked that question, because that's something that a lot of people say. I think people who don't understand it say that a lot, but I know a lot of people that do it for free, honestly. There are things you can get completely online that are free. There are resources through the internet, obviously. But then there are what we call unit studies that you can look at online or borrow from a friend. We do that all the time in the homeschool community. We borrow, trade, sell our used stuff. And so whether you want to pay nothing or pay a little bit, or if you've got a budget and you really want to spend it on some good stuff, there's all kinds available. You can order a curriculum that's the complete package for, your 6th grade child. It's got every single subject you need and every resource, and have it shipped to you in a box to your door. And it'll cost you several $100s for the year. And that's kind of on the high end of homeschooling costs, but I never spend that. I still school 4 children, and I might spend about $100 a year on the stuff that we use.
That's amazing.
And so, anybody. That's why I say anybody can do it, and I'm always available to answer questions on that kind of thing. Where do I find the cheap stuff, or where do I find the really, the really solid stuff? And I don't care how much it costs. It's available to everybody.
Very cool. Now, Nicki, you said that you were always available for questions. Do you have a website? I know you do. If you want to give your website URL here, maybe even your Facebook contact information, just let people know where they can get in contact with you if they have additional questions or need additional resources.
Yes, my website is nickitruesdell.com. That's nickitruesdell.com. And I actually have a tab at the top that says homeschool. And so there's tons of stuff there, tons of information. I have one page dedicated to curriculum where I review what we've used and liked. And I'm also part of a team called the Homeschool Review Crew. And so I get sent curriculum throughout the year to try with my family, and so I use it and then talk about it on my website too. I also have my Facebook page, nickitruesdell.com, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram, so you can reach me, follow me. I try to share as much as possible from our actual homeschool day so people see what it's like and kind of get a sense for what we do throughout the day, and every day looks different, but all of those different social media sites look different each day, so go ahead and follow me on all of them.
I found it interesting, and we will definitely follow you on all of them. I found it interesting. I was perusing your Facebook page while we were having our conversation, and I couldn't help but notice the very first picture that was posted roughly 4 hours ago is it looks like your little boy there with a butterfly, and it looks like maybe your daughter thumbing through a butterfly book, yeah?
Yep, that's right. That was one of today's little impromptu lessons.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I do try to share helpful stuff and encouraging stuff for people. That's mostly where I go on all of my social media, and there will be some political stuff thrown in too, but I really just try to encourage and demonstrate what it's like.
Nicki, I got to tell you, I have truly enjoyed listening to your journey, and the stories and the information that you shared was very inspiring. Hey, if you would please give Readily Random one parting piece of guidance, then share the best way that we can find you, your social media, your email, that sort of thing, and then we'll wrap this up.
I would just like to say that every single parent is capable of teaching their children, but we're in a mindset in our country and it's just our society that it takes special training and thousands of dollars and special equipment. But remember that a school is set up to manage hundreds of children efficiently, and so they have to operate on a certain schedule with a certain scope and sequence, and they have to answer to the state because it's taxpayer dollars that fund the schools. When you homeschool, especially in Texas, you're free from all of that. That doesn't mean you're free to not educate. It means you're free to give your children the whole world on their terms, on your terms, on your budget, and on your timetable. And so I always just say, think outside the classroom.
Nicki, all of the Readily Random listeners are well aware that they can find links to everything of value that we mentioned in today's episode by going to readilyrandom.com and simply typing Nicki Truesdell in the search bar. The show notes will pop right up, as will the episode once it's published. Nicki, thank you again for being so generous with your time, your expertise, and your experience. Readily Random salutes you, and we will catch up to you in the classroom. Or not.
Thanks, Larry. I appreciate it.